Welcome to This Week in Morgan County. I'm your host, Russell Mokhiber. Our guest this week is Selina Vickers. Selina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
You drove all the way up from the southern part of the state to be with us this morning. Thank you. And tell us a little bit about your history. Where were you born and raised, where you went to college, and what you've been doing since college?
I was born and raised in Beckley, West Virginia. I went to Berea College in Kentucky, and then later I got my graduate degree in counseling from Marshall University Graduate College. And I'm a licensed social worker, and I've been working with children and families pretty much my entire adult life.
And you're here today with us because we're interested in your story, your political activism, your duties as a citizen, and how you work at it. And let's focus on 2016 because you're a Democrat.
Yes.
And this state went overwhelmingly in the primary for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton in 2016.
That is correct.
But when the delegation went to the convention, in fact, the delegation voted for Hillary Clinton. How did that happen?
Yes. So Hillary Clinton won 36% of the vote in the primary, but she won 51% of the West Virginia delegates, which gave her West Virginia. And that it didn't just happen in West Virginia, it happened in other places very similar, and people felt very disenfranchised.
In other states?
In other states. I mean, Wyoming was another state that was really, really bad. And so what happened is the Democratic Party has an elite set of delegates called superdelegates, or their official is unpledged. But they have the ability, they have a free vote that is not connected to the outcome of the primary. And they're basically DNC members, members of Congress, governors, those type of people. And so what happened...
Who, for example, were some of the superdelegates that we might know from West Virginia?
Joe Manchin, Governor Tomlin at the time, Natalie Tennant, she was a DNC member, Elaine Harris, Pat Maroney, Belinda Biafor, and Bill Laird. Those are our DNC members.
So even though the state Democrats voted overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders, he took all 55 counties.
Every single county, yes.
Those superdelegates all voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yes, yes. So and you had this flyer that you have. I went around to the DNC members and the Unity Reform Commission and Rules and Bylaws of the DNC to talk to them about that. Bernie had 18 pledged delegates. That's what he got out of the proportional aspect of the primary, and then Hillary had 11, but there were 8 superdelegates, and they were not bound to the outcome of the state. And so those 8, and I can't prove this, but what I've been told and what I believe happened is that Senator Manchin whipped those 8 superdelegate votes to give Hillary the win of West Virginia.
There was you tell a story on your blog, there was a superdelegate who refused to go for Hillary Clinton. Who was that, and what happened in that? Tell us that story.
Okay, so your DNC members are your chair, vice chair, Democratic man, and Democratic woman. That's who it is in West Virginia. And so back in the spring of 2016, our vice chair of the Democratic Party in West Virginia was Chris Regan. And he came out in support of Bernie Sanders. He has written openly about Senator Manchin and Larry Puccio, who is sort of like an insider that works for Manchin, contacted him and basically demanded that he abandon that thought and vote for Hillary, and he refused to do that. So the West Virginia State Democratic Convention was in June before the DNC convention, and so what happened is they put somebody else in for that position, which was William Laird, and he got that position. So basically Chris was ousted, and they put in somebody who just happened to vote for Hillary Clinton. So if just that one had changed, it would have been the outcome.
The state would have gone for Sanders. If Reagan had been allowed to stay, the state would have gone. The state's delegates would have gone at the convention to Bernie.
I think it would have been a tie because that would have we had 18, 19. Yeah, I think that would have done it. Yeah.
So instead, they got rid of him.
They got rid of him and they put somebody else in place. Now, I happened to be at a meeting one time back before the primary, and Senator Manchin said, "I told Hillary that we couldn't deliver West Virginia to her in the general election, but we could deliver it to her in the primary. So that was well before anything happened. So he made that happen. He lived up to whatever that promise he made to Hillary. Mm-hmm.
So it's called the Democratic Party. It's supposed to be about democracy. The people of West Virginia vote for Bernie Sanders, but it turns out that because of this superdelegate structure, mm-hmm. they can decide who the nominee is from the state.
Well, yeah, all those superdelegates together. Now, that is a rule that the DNC has. So, I was a delegate for Bernie in Philadelphia. One of the things that came out of the convention is a resolution calling for the Unity Reform Commission, because while we were really upset about superdelegates, other states were really upset about the caucus system and about closed primaries. Did you know if you lived in New York, you had to be a registered Democrat 6 months before the primary? I mean, that was even before the first debate. You know what I mean? So if you were independent and then 3 months before the primary, you're like, oh, I really like Hillary, or I really like Bernie, and you wanted to change your registration, you couldn't. So there were a lot of different issues. So they formed this we passed this resolution calling for Unity Reform Commission to look at a lot of things, to address primaries, caucuses, overall party reform, and the superdelegate issue. And so they created a Unity Reform Commission, which was made up of a few Bernie, a little bit more Hillary, and then 3 Perez appointees. Tom Perez, who was the chairperson. And so they met 5 times in 2017. I knew when I learned about where their meetings were, they were on their 3rd meeting. It was in Chicago. So I went to that meeting, and that's when I made that flyer up. And I very naively thought, oh, if I could go and talk to them about the fallout that happened in West Virginia, because people were so upset. I mean, Bernie was very popular in West Virginia. So many people worked so hard for him, and then they just exited. They just left the party and just said, screw it, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And I'm like, I'm very frustrated with them, but I take the stance of I'm the dim inner. We've got 2 major parties.
You want to stay in. And
yeah,
we want to get into it.
Yeah.
We want to get into why you're staying in.
Okay,
but
all right.
On this flyer, you point out what happened, that the Democrats in the state voted for Bernie, but in fact Hillary became the nominee for the state. But you say that it had more than just that impact, that there was a fallout down ballot. So tell us your argument there.
Yes, so I think what I wanted the superdelegate or the people who were in favor of superdelegates to understand, like, they are only jockeying for who they want to be president, who's going to, and they're thinking really, really high level stuff. They forget that there's a lot of down ballot effect. And the case that I was making is people were so frustrated and they left the party. We couldn't get out the vote for Hillary because she was so unpopular in West Virginia. And what ended up happening is everybody that supported Trump came out in the general election. They voted Trump, and then they voted Republican right down the ballot. And because we weren't able to get out the vote for Hillary, and to be quite honest, the Democratic Party didn't even try to do that in West Virginia. So anybody that talks trash about people who didn't vote for Hillary in West Virginia, they did not even try. But anyway, so
the Bernie people were so disgusted that they didn't go to the polls. Is that what you're saying?
The Bernie people got behind other people, but in general, I think the average people were so disgusted that a lot of people stayed home. And I wanted them to understand that we had, the Republicans completely took care. And I'm not anti-Republican. I think people need to have fair representation. But we have some really awful people in our legislature now who are very anti-government and anti-union, and I think the policies are very one-sided and unfair and do not represent the will of the people. And I just wanted them to understand that when we had somebody go and got them to go vote for the first time, and they were excited about voting, and we even got some Republicans who really believed in Bernie's message who changed the registration, not to be a spoiler, but they really wanted Bernie. And then to find out, hey, he won overwhelmingly in the state, every single county, but he couldn't win. I mean, do you see that people feel very,
right.
My vote doesn't count, and then they don't want to come out and do anything more because they feel like their vote doesn't count.
What's the status of the reform within the party?
Well, it's actually very good. Unity Reform Commission, they made some really great recommendations. They handed that off to the Rules and Bylaws Committee. They have made they didn't go quite as far, I think, as the Unity Reform on some things, but actually farther in others. And the recommendation that they have made, which the full DNC will vote on in August, is that superdelegates basically can't vote on the first ballot unless a couple things happen. One, they want the first ballot to be the delegates, the pledged delegates that come out of the proportionality of the primaries and the caucuses, and then they'll automatically win if they get to 50% plus one. Okay.
So under that reform, Bernie would have won West Virginia.
He definitely would have won West Virginia.
The delegates would have gone for Bernie to the national convention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the superdelegates would have won also, but
they wouldn't have a vote on the first ballot.
They wouldn't have a vote unless the candidate that's in the lead is so far in the lead that even if the superdelegates voted, they could not overturn the outcome. So because they say that they want to vote, right? So we're sort of okay with that. The other way that they would be able to vote is if you go to the convention and there are 3 or more candidates and nobody's gotten to 50% plus one, then at that point the superdelegates can vote on the first ballot. Okay. So anyway.
You made national news recently because you were an active citizen, but tell us what happened and how it made national news.
Okay, so I've been going to these Unity Reform Commission and Rules and Bylaws Committee because, it's important that people know what's going on and that they have a voice in and go around and talk, because people didn't, before I showed up with that flyer, they had no clue what happened in West Virginia. Now any of them have a discussion, they always mention Bernie Sanders won all 55 counties in West Virginia. They got that from us. And so, I go to DNC meetings and I live stream them so people can see what's going on and be able to communicate. Well, there was this one gentleman from California. His name is Bob Mulholland. He's a DNC member, very, very old guard. And I'd had a couple conversations with him at different events. Well, at one point he asked me who I voted for, and I voted for Jill Stein for president.
The Green Party candidate? The
Green Party candidate, because Hillary there was no chance that she could win in West Virginia, and I wanted to help the Green Party with ballot access and that type of thing. So anyway, he wrote an email to a bunch of people, including a bunch of press, and talked about me, that the reason that this whole effort to get rid of superdelegates was a plot from Vladimir Putin to destroy the Democratic Party and that sort of thing.
He accused you of being a Putin puppet.
He did.
Not in those words, I don't think, but
he did.
Effectively.
Basically a Russian spy to destroy the Democratic Party. And the fact is, I don't think that he believes that in the least. But anyway, that's what he said. And he copied a bunch of journalists on it, and one of them being Dave Weigel with Washington Post, who covers these meetings. And I've talked to David Weigel many times. I've given him this flyer. And so he knew that he was talking about me. He contacted me, and I had just got back from Providence, Rhode Island to their meeting. And he basically what Mulholland said is that there's no way that I could be covering the expenses myself, and that somebody was covering my expenses. It was probably Putin. And so what I did, I had stayed at like an Airbnb. It was like $30 a night. I'd found like a round trip plane ticket for $150. So I just sent my receipts. I had them all on my email, and I sent them to Dave Weigel, and he contacted Bob Mulholland, said, look, she did this weekend trip for like $300, and then Mulholland doubled down and said, there's no way. I don't know if he thinks people in West Virginia don't have $300 they can spend on a weekend. I don't know. But anyway, so then when Dave Weigel wrote it, he works for the Washington Post, and so he wrote his article, which I thought was a very, very nice article, and basically called that out. And
do you there's a lot of this Russia baiting, sort of McCarthyism going on, where anybody that challenges the Democratic Party from left, right, or center is considered a Putin puppet or an agent. Are you seeing more of that? And what do you think of that? Why is that happening?
I think, you know what I think it is? I think it's the exact same philosophy of argument as the super conservative people say about taking a knee. If you take a knee, you're anti-patriotic, you know, anti-American, and that is not true. And I think it's just a ploy to say if you're not on our team, then you are a horrible person and you have these bad intentions, you know. And so I think it's just that. I think people in power that want to stay in power, they do things like that. So I think it's probably it's happened a million times, and I just happened to be the person that got, you know, caught up in it. And it's actually been really positive because people, like there was a handful of wonky people watching my live streams, and now there's people all over the world that want to watch my live streams. They want to send me money so I don't have to do this all on my own dime, which has been all on my own dime. So it actually turned out positive.
You ran for House of Delegates as a Democrat this year. Just lost from Fayette County, right?
Yes.
Just lost by 100 votes.
It's 60.
60 votes. What is? Give us your synopsis of what happened and why you lost.
Well, we're a 3-person district, and I had never run before, and there were 4 Democrats running for 3 slots, and the other Democrats all had run before. 2 of them had been in the House of Delegates before. One of them's father has been in Congress before. One of them had actually run for governor. They had much more experience, better name recognition than I did. I got all the endorsements. I had lots of volunteers, lots of energy, a really great message, but I didn't have the name recognition. And I made a bunch of rookie mistakes, you know. And
what were they? So people can learn from them.
One of them is name recognition. I should have done more to get my name out. I was so focused on, you know, organizing and message building and that sort of thing that I didn't do the big name recognition stuff. I had money to spend that I didn't spend because I had all the union endorsements.
And you were saving it for the general.
I was saving it for the general. Like everybody thought I was going to win. You know, it was a shocker to everybody. But I just did not do enough. I had 60 votes, and if I would have, you know, spent some of that money, like one TV ad, you know, I could have done that. And you know, and I wish I would have, but it was a rookie mistake. And I do not dislike the people that I ran against. I've reached out. I'm willing to help them, work with them, and I hope they do I hope they win. I hope they do a good job. Okay,
and finally. There is a perception that both parties are corrupted by corporate money, corrupted by, you know, the Hillary kind of machine money on both sides. And they're trying to build independent politics, have people to run as independent, third-party candidates. Why did you choose, after seeing what you saw, that the state goes for Bernie, but he's denied the nomination in West Virginia when they go to the convention? Why did you decide to spend your civic energy, and you have a lot of it, you've been working very hard within the party and not outside the party?
Because there's 2 major parties, and they both have really they're strongholds. And until we get, and they're both corrupt, and it is, if you think it's impossible to get for a corrupt-free person to get through in one of the parties, can you only imagine what it's like to be outside the party, to not even be able to be invited into debates and things like that? You're basically ignored. Republicans need to be involved, and they need to take over their party. Good Democrats need to take over their party and rid corruption and make things transparent and give people an opportunity to participate.
But don't you think that if you look back on history, there are historical moments where parties are pushed aside and new parties are created? Obviously the Republican Party started as an anti-slavery party. Are we now in do you ever think, are we now in one of those moments where they're crumbling, they're going to disappear, and something new will emerge?
I do think that, and I feel like we have to get control of one of those parties before we can make things fair. I would love to see multiple parties like they do in Canada, but I just don't see it happening. I think we have to get control, and I think it's starting to happen in the Democratic Party. That we're starting to open up, but it's going to take a lot more work, and people get involved from the ground up and focusing on the right thing.
And if people wanted to track your writing, and do you have a blog or a website?
I do. So SelinaVickers.com, and I turned my campaign page into just a page where I can write blogs and put the live streams, and I want people to use the information to educate themselves and to educate others, and to be able to participate in this political system.
Thank you, Selina Vickers, so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for watching This Week in Morgan County.